Alright, Game Bears, it is time for a new episode of Unused Content and Games, and today we're doing the third and final part of the Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee Unused Content videos. So we're going to start off today with mechanics differences, so let us begin. But before we do begin, I'd like to ask those of you, if anywhere down the line in the video you enjoy this, please consider leaving a subscribe so you can get more content on unused content in games. So thank you, and let us get to it, starting with some move changes. Alright, some Pokemon moves operate differently or have slightly different descriptions when compared to the final version. Alright, here are the names. We got moves like Zippy Zap, Bouncy Bubble, pretty much all of the moves for the two partner Pokemon, depending on if you're using Pikachu or Eevee. Some of their effects were actually different in this build, in the May 2018 build, as you can see over here. Alright, like Zippy Zap over here. In the prototype build, the user attacks the target with a burst of electricity at high speed. This move boosts the user's evasion and always goes first, where in the final version, it will just let you critical hit all the time. Honestly, the prototype version would have been way more broken. It has priority and raises your evasion. We all know how broken that is. I guess the devs thought that would be way too good, so they decided to nerf that. Bouncy Bubble. Initially, in the prototype version, it was 60 base power, now it's 90 base power in the final version. These are attacks by shooting water bubbles at the target. The user absorbs water and restores his HP by the same amount as the target, the same amount as the damage taken by the target, not half of the damage taken by the target. That move would have been weaker in power, but its effect, I'd argue, is more broken than what we got in the final version, where it only restores half of its HP, half of the HP that it dealt to the target. Alright, Buzzy Buzz would have only been base 60 power back in the prototype version. Sizzly Slide would have been base 60 power. Glitzy Glow would have been base 80 power, 95 accuracy, instead of 90 and 100, respectively. Batty Bad would have been 80 base power, 95 accuracy. Seppi Seed would have been 100 power, 90 accuracy instead of 90 power and 100 accuracy. Freezy Frost would have been 100 power and 90 accuracy instead. And finally, Sparkly Swirl would have been 120 base power and 85% accurate instead of 90 base power and 100% accurate. Alright, secret techniques. Light Up. In this build, a kid in the house where you obtain Light Up refers to it as Shine, whereas in the final it is not the case. This implies that the prototype name for its secret technique was originally Shine, which seems appropriate given that this move serves the same purpose as Flash did in original Pokemon Yellow. In every other instance with this build, this technique is still referred to as Light Up. Alright, and this kid right over here, you can get through the rock tunnel if you use Shine. Use the Shine, Fox. Kidding me, wrong game. Anyways, catch combos. Alright, Unused does the catch combo, cap out at 31 still, and you can read all of that. But let's get to the more important things. Catch combos function very differently than in the final build of the game. Unlike in the final, they persist through capturing different species of Pokemon. Really, that would have actually made it better in my personal opinion, but whatever. Running away from Pokemon completely ends the combo, which isn't the case in the final version. Alright, candies and the Pokemon box. The candy mechanics. Candy is not picked up whenever a Pokemon is caught, unlike in the final version. You can only get candy through sending your Pokemon to Professor Oak. All species candies seem to be unobtainable. Sending Pokemon to Professor Oak only yields stat boosting candies. Alright, Pokeballs. Pokemarts do not sell Premier Balls in bulk. Buying 10 plus Pokeballs will always yield in a single bonus for Premier Ball, as opposed to getting one for every 10 Pokeball that you get in the final version. Kind of like how it was in older games pre-Generation 7, I believe. Trainers that reward the player with free Pokeballs or winning a battle in the final game do not in any circumstance throughout the spell. Excuse me, I can't read again. Pokemon boxes. You can't select multiple Pokemon to send to Professor Oak with A, like you can in the final version. Strangely, Y is still used instead, which can be seen below, as you can see right over here. So imagine how annoying this would be every time you're trying to catch a fuck ton of Pokemon, you want to send them all to Oak, but nope, I gotta send them one at a time, so I'm glad they changed that. Instead of hitting check summary to see a Pokemon statistics like in the final version, the player must choose check it out. Nicknames was changed to change nickname in the final version, and this is what it looks like. Wild Pokemon. An overall wild encounters. Symbol encounters are reset after a battle or wild encounter, which isn't the case in the final version. Many Pokemon often clip through walls and other inaccessible terrains that the player cannot access as a result of a bug. In the final release, this does not happen, most likely because the collision detection wasn't fully completed yet. Other differences. The experience share is referenced when your party gains XP for a Pokemon battle, or a trainer battle. Despite not being an item, clearly a leftover from previous games, even if it is functionally identical to the final, and here's what that looks like. Our mini trainers often give the player double the amounts of money when compared to the final game. Our Sea Skim dialogue describes your Pokemon like they prefer the water as opposed to the Sea Skim prompts you get in the final version. And finally, Go Park. Text found in the game script mentions how you can hold 100 Pokemon in each Go Park within the Go Park complex, known simply as Go Park, in this build, as opposed to the 50 in the final game. Uh-oh, there are already 100 Pokemon in insert name here. You can put more than 100 Pokemon in a park. Or you can't. Either select a different park to transfer your Pokemon to, or move them, some Pokemon from this location here. And in the final version, oh no, this transfer can't be completed because you can't have more than 50 Pokemon. Just same dialogue, just says 50 instead of 100. Now let's go back. We're going to look at wild encounter tables. Some of them are different than in the final game. Alright, in Diglett's Cave in the prototype build, your partner Pokemon's level over here could be 15 to 20, where in the final version it's changed to 13 to 18. Actually, wait a minute, excuse me, I misunderstood. This is for the different versions. So it seems like Zubat, Diglett, and Dugtrio can all be found between level 15 and 20 in the prototype version, whereas in the final, they were found at level 13 to 18. Diglett's encounter rate was changed from 65 to 85, and Zubat's was changed from 30 to 10%. And it seems instead of Dugtrio, you get Slowpoke in the final version. I wonder why they changed that. In the original, you didn't even get Slowpoke in Diglett's Cave. So they could have kept it the same in my opinion, but whatever. Seafoam Islands. As in the final, Sea Skim Pokemon can only be obtained by the player on floors that have water, despite having encounter data programmed for floors without it. Alright, that's good to know. So all these Pokemon can be found between levels 41 through 46 in the prototype version, whereas in the final, it's only from level 39 to 44. And here are the different encounter tables. Give you all a second to read that. If you want to pause, go on ahead. Alright, and finally, level ranges. Many areas do not have different encounter rates or Pokemon spawns to the final, just difference in the range of levels the player can encounter wild Pokemon at. These changes are listed here. Typically, they were much higher than the final and scaled appropriately, depending on which floor of the dungeon the player is on, and here's what that looks like. Like the northern part of Route 2, they'd be level 3 to 4. However, on the southern part, they'd be from level 3 to 8, where in the final version, they changed that to level 3 to 4. That's just an example. I'll let you guys read the rest if you'd like. Alright, so moving on. We will now look at music and sounds. And as usual, I won't be able to play any of the songs here, but I will say what they belong to. Again, just to avoid any copyright claims. Let's got music. Music that is now present in the final build. We have Red and Green's opening. The piano and MIDI rendition of Pokemon Red and Green's classic opening theme. The test audio. Some areas in the game use a very basic sounding track that seems like it was for testing. You always gotta have those test songs, and here are a bunch of songs for other parts of the game. Many songs have unfinished versions in a typical piano MIDI format that are obviously very different than in the final build. Most songs have both an intro and looping sections. We got one for the Wild Battle theme, the Gym Leader theme, Gym Leader Defeated, Pokemon Tower, Cerulean City / the Game Quarter, Team Rocket Hideout, the Team Rocket Encounter, Sea Skim, Silphco, Pokemon Mansion, Indigo Plateau, Champion Battle, the Hall of Fame, and the credits. Alright, let's look at some script changes. Alright, internal codenames. Meltan and Melmetal. In this build, it is revealed that Meltan and Melmetal's codenames are both Rare Metal 1 and Rare Metal 2, respectively. If you all would like to, I'd put that in the description below for you guys. Pokemon Trainer Red. Pewter City. Red was likely planned to have an appearance far earlier in the game outside of the post-game Master Trainer quest. It appears that he was to appear alongside Blue's debut in Pewter City. As the dialogue he has in this scene references Red, as if he was standing right next to him. He also gives you 5 rare candies as opposed to 5 Great Balls like in the final version. I prefer the 5 rare candies, thank you. But whatever. See, what I tell you, Red? I'm always right. So maybe Red was supposed to show up in this scene over here, as you can see. And this guy here is Red. And they most likely just didn't place Red here, either because they weren't done with his 3D model yet, or somewhere down the line, they decided to remove him from that spot of the game. This could also be unused dialogue from, well, not unused, but sort of placeholder dialogue from Pokemon Sun and Moon, since I'm pretty sure he has the same dialogue for that in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. But anyways, secret techniques. Light up. Oh, we already went over that earlier. We're not going to go through that again. Bug errors and oddities. Character names Trace. Oh yeah, the Pokemon Stadium NPC. oak, etc., are often formatted in all caps, which was the case for all games in the series prior to Pokemon Black and White. Given that much of the script is directly copied from Fireleaf Green, many undefined tag errors appear rather frequently in dialogue. This is a holdover from when the original script would tell the game to do something, such as advance to the next cutscene, or give the player an item. Just simple coding things that were clearly unfinished and were changed later on. Paid and outrageous. Alright, untranslated text. The build seems to be in the middle of a localization period, so a fraction of the game's text is in Japanese. Again, it just wasn't fully localized yet, that's all that is. And we already went over these before, we don't need to deal with that again. Just some text changes for those items. Now here are some textures for some of the Pokemon. I'm not going to go through every single one of them because it's kind of hard to tell what really changed outside of maybe some like straight colors, I guess, like you can see with Venusaur down here. But here are some of the differences. Our Pokemon textures that are the same in the final aren't listed here. Shiny Pokemon textures are also included, given that they're just hue shifts from the textures already in this table, and therefore represented those changes the same. If you're struggling to see the changes, click on the individual images to see them in full size. I wouldn't do that for every single thing. But yeah. Alright, final has more detail shading around the spots for Bulbasaur, whereas the bulb has no changes. Its eyes have less defined edges. Alright, this doesn't make a visible difference on the in-game model, however, so thanks for pointing it out, I guess. And I'm not entirely sure what this red spot is supposed to be, but whatever. Maybe for its eye texture? I don't know. I think so, since Bulbasaur's eyes are red. Each uses a different texture. Ivysaur's leaves are also colored totally differently, alongside his bulb being a darker color, as you can see here. I kind of like the more vibrant green color that went within the final version in its petals. This color looks kind of weird. I don't know. This pink looks better. For Venusaur, it has many different color changes, as you can see. Its stem and leaves are a different shade of green, and the flowers is far more pale in the final version. I wonder what that would have all looked like on their finished models. Alright, back spots are smoother, and the flower is far more simply shaded in the final version. Yeah, the colors for Ultimate Venusaur over here are much duller than in the final version over here. Alright, now for Charmander. Now, shadows are more detailed and colors slightly deeper in the final version. The outside of the highlights on Charmander's eyes are smooth, and not rough like the final version. Alright, and for Charmeleon and Squirtle are the last ones. The final body is slightly lighter with less prominent shadows. Charmeleon's eyes are also outlined in the color on the photo. And finally for Squirtle. Squirtle's shell textures and overall line work has far heavier shading than in the final. Its eyes also sport much simpler, less blended eyes. And here's what all of those look like. Going back, finally we have Pokemon Learn sets that have been changed. This one isn't very long, just a few simple changes. As to be expected, many Pokemon have slightly different movesets when compared to the final version. We have Pikachu over here, most likely for any Pikachu, not just a partner Pikachu. As you can see in the prototype build, Thundershock, Growl, and Tail Whip are all the same. However, Double Kick I would have learned to level 6 as opposed to level 9 in the final version, and Quick Attack, we don't know what level would have learned to that, but in the final version, it's at level 6. So likely it just wasn't planned what level I would have learned Quick Attack yet at this point in the game, or at this point in its build. For Bellsprout, it would have still learned Vine Whip at level 1. They don't know what level they would have learned Growth at in the prototype version, where in the final it learns at level 10, and Wrap is learned at level 8 instead of level 11 like in the final game. And finally, for Eevee, Tackle, Growl, and Tail Whip are all still learned at the same level. Double Kick would have been learned at level 7 instead of level 10. Quick Attack most likely wasn't programmed in yet, so know when they wanted to learn when they wanted to learn that move. And in the final version, that was changed to level 6. Sand Attack would have still been learned at level 14 in both builds, and Bite would have been learned at level 16 as opposed to level 17 in the final version. Alright, debug tables, there's nothing there, and now we get to the final stretch of this video. Certain cutscenes and opening screens, as you can see this one over here. Opening scenes. Title screen and intro. The title screen and logo are completely different. This version doesn't check if you're Eevee's custom outfit, and instead uses a generic looping image. The individual frames of this image can be found in the final of this build. In the files of this build. Interestingly, you can still access the final title screen through the debug on boot up, using this code you see on screen right here. A prototype title screen that dates even further back in the game's development is also present within the game's files. This is also found in the files of the October 2020 Sword and Shield prototype build. And here's what this original screen looks like using part of the Pokemon Go logo, as you can see here. Also, Elaine looks significantly different than how she looks in the final version. I prefer her final design. Alright, and here's a Japanese version of the prototype screen, much closer to the final, and this is from the 2018 build. The May 2018 build, and here's the final version. The one we all know and love. Alright, this video is unavailable, so we're not going to bother playing that. Here's an animated video of the title screen frames. Sadly, we can't look at it. The earliest logos in the files. It and the title screen that is included within appears to be from a time period before Eevee was decided as the final starter, as the logo is strictly Pokemon Go themed. Since this game is slightly based on Pokemon Go, it kind of makes sense that they'd use Pokemon Go as a sort of template. The game name at this point translates to Pocket Monster Pikachu Go, and here's what it looks like. Draft version 0330. Likewise, there are two very early logos that can be found in the final files, alongside the Japanese logo as well as the final logo and all of the other languages. And here's what these look like. And here are the final versions. Additionally, the language select text box has a slight difference in its pronunciation and text box color. There is no pre-render animation preceding the language selected with Pikachu or Eevee like there is in the final version. Here's what that looks like. And strangely enough, what follows is a tiled version of Ultra and Ultra Moon's opening that often crashes the game. We can't see that, sadly. Alright, Oak's intro is very different. You are never woken up by Pikachu or Eevee, and Oak sends them out in a Pokeball to introduce you to the world of Pokemon instead. In the final, he sends out a Cubone that follows him for a short while. We can't see that either, sadly. Alright, here's some more unused textures and whatnot. Interestingly, Oak mentions that you have been friends and rivals with Trace since you were babies, whereas in the final, he simply mentions how you grew up next door to each other. Kind of a reference to what he says to Red and Blue in, the original games. The appearance selection is noticeably unfinished. With it, uses recolored edits of the protagonist's concept arts, instead of their in-game 3D models as the previews, and here's what that looks like. A part of me kind of prefers these 2D concept arts, actually, as opposed to the 3D models they use in the final version. I don't know, they kind of look better in my opinion. These still don't look half bad, though. Alright, Pallet Town and opening. The opening to the game is radically different. The prototype depicts the player as if they're waking up from a dream, cuddling a Pokédoll. That would have been, never mind what I was about to say. Whereas in the final, the player appears in their avatar in front of their Nintendo Switch. Interestingly, the map, in the background of the cutscene is replaced by the window in both the final build and after the cutscene ends in the prototype, which also depicts many visual differences in the dusk area. We can't see that, sadly. And here's that cutscene in the final version. This map heavily references Kanto's appearance in Red and Blue official art. This map is seen in other places throughout the game, such as under Trace's Pokemon journal in his house, which also appears to be in the final version. Alright, we've already seen that in the previous parts. Let's just skim through these as quickly as possible. I just saw a picture down there, actually. I want to go back here for a second. And here's what that little cutscene would have looked like. That's an enjoyable little Pikachu plushie she got. And here's the final map. This one does look really cool, though. Imagine Kanto looking like this, or this even. Strange. Whatever. Before he enters your room, your rival is known as question mark in the final, which isn't the case here. He asks, did you have a weird dream or something? Which ties into the major difference in the intro. In the final, he suggests that you check an email he sent, which goes over the basic controls, whereas in the prototype, he only teaches the player how to save. The save select screen, it looks a little different than what we went through before. The save select screen has some minor changes, including your trainer holding an Eevee that isn't there. Again, it's most likely just a placeholder model till Eevee was actually placed there, or Pikachu depending on which version you had. This is fixed when they're able to ride on your head, as you can see here. And here's what it looks like in the final version, before you have Eevee. Our text box graphics are also different in various areas throughout the game. Here's what that looks like. Actually, this doesn't look half bad. And here's what it looks like in the final version. Your starter Pokemon. When catching your starter Pokemon, the background skybox depicts a cityscape, which isn't the case in the final version. An unused battle transition is also present. The tutorial screens are obvious placeholders and have a strange orange tint in the game. In the main game, and here's what that looks like. This is so crudely drawn, just look at this. And I guess that's supposed to be a Pikachu there, I don't know. And here's what that looks like in the final version. The cutscene features your starter is also largely broken, just clearly unfinished before Pikachu or Eevee was even placed there. Most likely just testing how the cutscene would work before they place said Pokemon there. After leaving Oak's lab, your mother comes over to give you sportswear, but in the final, you're given a town map. I cut different visuals. Unused loading animation. A very finished looking loading animation is used whenever you load a pre-existing save file. From the title screen, which actually, I don't know, this loading screen actually looks kind of good. I kind of wish they used this. This looks nice. In battle, the UI during the result of a battle sports various differences when compared to the final, such as a more retro-styled font of a Pokemon's level and a different position for their gender symbol. It also depicts the amount of EXP gained differently, and here's what that looks like. Very Game Boy looking text for the levels. Actually, I kind of prefer that over what we really got, I'll be honest. Though the placement of the gender symbol is a bit better in the final version. Alright, the town map. The town map is noticeably unfinished. Even at this late stage, many areas don't register as being visited, and the preview icon for each area in the top right are all placeholder images. The icon that displays the player's position is also much larger than in the final version. Here's what that looks like. Yeah, the map itself even looks like the map graphics over here even look a bit unfinished as well. And here's what it looks like in the final version, with more cities and whatnot, and you can tell you were at those areas before, all that stuff. The Pokemon Sensor. In the files, another early map of Kanto can be found, which was intended to be in the Pokemon Center scattered across the region. It's much less refined than in the final, and has an additional island at the bottom that doesn't appear in the final version of the game. Here is this. This island most likely over here is what they're talking about. Doesn't appear in any other versions of Kanto either. Actually, would have been nice to see what that would have been. I guess, well, that should be a separate question of the day, I suppose. What island do you think this would have been? It couldn't have been the Sevi Isles, but what island do you think this would have been? Let us know. Whatever you think it might be. But anyways, here's what the map looks like in the final version. Alright, Switch menu icons. The game's Nintendo Switch menu icon is noticeably different from the more refined one in the final version. That's what this is what it looks like. I kind of like they went with this instead. It's far more stylized. It's a lot less lazy, I guess you could say. Maybe not lazy, just a little unfinished, I guess. Just putting a Eevee head on there and a Pikachu head for the Pikachu version. I prefer this significantly more. Alright, Mega Evolution icons. Mega Evolution uses the same unique sprite that were used in the 3DS games, as opposed to the Mega Stones ones in the final version. They could have made stylized sprites for the Mega Evolution sprites over here, instead of just, getting the normal Pokemon sprite, but hey, let's throw a Mega Stone next to it. I would have preferred that, personally, but whatever. And the credits. The credits uses noticeably unfinished assets, with Eevee just being a slightly recolored Pikachu. It's just a placeholder, there's a reason why that's the case. The player's animations are missing a frame, and there are no final variations of their chosen skin color at this point either. Since the actual credits are a work in progress, it scrolls far faster than the animation does, which also causes the audio to finish before the sequence is completed. And here's what all this looks like. I like how for Eevee they just use a brown Pikachu. That's just funny to me. Perhaps this is hinting at a new regional form for Pikachu. Hint, maybe. Game Freak, you tell there's something here you know about that we don't know. Whatever. But here's what all that looks like, and here's what they look like in the final version. I don't know, brown Pikachu would be pretty cool. Make it a ground type. Anyways. The other assets from the credits sequences, like the ground and the trees, are also shown as placeholders when compared to the final. Notably, there are placeholder images from the pictures that appear during the credits from the player's adventure. And here's what all of that looks like. I won't go through all of them, but just a few. And notice how they're just recolors of each other until they were more stylized in the final version. We have a flower field, another different flower field, a little oceanside it looks like, and more flower fields. Here's a prototype tree with some Japanese symbols on it. If anybody speaks Japanese, please let me know what that says. And here are more of the final trees in the final version. Alright, and we have this little prototype screen, MM_00, whatever that would have been used for. And this is for this cutscene when you get your Pokemon in the final version. Most likely this was just placed here since that cutscene hadn't been done yet. Alright, every building in the prototype are one of two placeholders, and none of the unique buildings exclusive to certain areas have completed assets yet. A couple of which can be seen right here. Or a couple which can be seen on the right. Here's what this looks like. Again, if anybody speaks Japanese, please let me know what that says. And here's the buildings in the final version. Here's a comparison between the final credits sequence when many of the assets are paired together. Here's what that looks like with all the unfinished assets. And here's what it looks like in the final version. Now we're on to battle icons. Early battle icon textures can be found in the game's files. They have 2 images per icon, and one would naturally appear when pressed as part of a confirmation option. And here's what that looks like. Alright, we got one for run, we got one for return option, the bag option. I can't really tell what that says. VAS, I don't know. Battle option. And when you want to switch your Pokemon, here's what they all look like in the final version. I still think the running stick figure over here looks kind of funny, actually. Alright, early town map icon. Early town map icons can be found in the game's files that aren't in the final version. Interestingly, one of them is for a fishing encounter, which do not exist in any prototype nor in the final version. Here's what these look like. I guess this would have happened if you tried to run away from a battle. Well, not run away from a battle, but... Or maybe not run away from battle. Instead, maybe certain parts of the map would show certain fishing locations, since Pokemon Sun and Moon was the first Pokemon game to kind of make fishing limited, before Generation 9 just straight up took it out. So, most likely this Pikachu and Eevee would have had limited fishing spots as well, and on the map, there would have been fishing icons where you could fish. That's my guess of what that would have been for. Our cutscenes. Bill's transformation. When the player aids Bill in transforming back into a human, the game overlays some sort of insignia during several scenes during the cutscene. It's unknown the purpose of this would have been. You can see the little icon right over here. I guess it's just there to let the game know that it's playing, perhaps? I don't know. That might be why that's there, but then it was later removed. Alright, these videos are unavailable, so we can't see them. The SSN cutscene is noticeably different. The smoke it emits is far more stylized than the final, and the model is significantly less refined. Too bad we can't see that, though. Our visual oddities. Texture, model, and graphical bugs. Certain Pokemon inexplicably shift downwards when interacted with, and here's what that looks like. I don't see how Goldeen is shifted downwards, but whatever. The color of the outside of Chansey's mouth texture doesn't match up properly with the rest of his body, and here's what that looks like closer inspection. You can still kind of see the line over here, so I'm glad they kind of... I think the reason why this is like this is because the mouth texture is a different color to the rest of Chansey's body. So in order to change that, they just had to match this texture with the rest of Chansey's body, so, it actually looks a bit better. But yeah. I guess originally Chansey was going to be a slightly lighter pink color than what we got in the final version. Our coughing and wheezing smokes animation in this build is largely broken and can be seen below. We can't see that, sadly. The HP bar drains incrementally as opposed to a smoother animation in the final version. We still can't see that. Alright, screen summaries. A Pokemon screen summary lacks many assets in the final version, such as the background, as well as many differences when it comes to the font and icon placements. The Pokemon itself is also largely displaced, relevant of its species. A background was implemented during the May 2018 build, but it was still largely unfinished. The fire type graphic is used in place of every other type graphic, which wasn't fixed for the final version. And here's what that looks like in the February 2018 build. Here's the May 2018 build. I noticed how in the February 2018 build, there's not really a background, it's just the background is kind of slightly blurred out with this weird net-looking pattern going on. And here's what it looks like in the final version, which definitely looks better. Alright, and finally, just different backgrounds. Every single summary screen has a vastly unfinished background when compared to the final versions. Here's what the normal type one looked like. I do like the more stylized ones we actually got in the final version. Here's the fighting type one. Here's the flying type one. See about the flying type final one we can't see, but whatever. Here's the poison type one. The ground type. Rock type. Bug type. Ghost type. And these are most likely here just as placeholders till they were done with the animations they really wanted to use. The final ghost type one looks really nice though. Steel type. Fire type. Water type. Grass type. Electric type. Sidekick type. Ice type. Dragon type. The dark type. And finally, the fairy type one. No, also not the question of the day, but of all these finished backgrounds, which one was your favorite and why? Just let me know. But anyways, I think that'll be it for this part of the Pokemon Let's Get Pikachu and Eevee Unused videos. Since this is part 3 and the final part as well, we went through everything that I found on this game. So if y'all enjoyed this and want to see more, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And answer the real question of the day. Of all the things that we went over in this part of the video, which one do you wish made it into the final game and why? I'd say... maybe these little concept arts over here would have been a nice little change instead of 3D models. 3D models look fine, but I don't know, a part of me just likes these a bit more. That I would prefer seeing in the final game, honestly. But anyways, answer the question of the day below, and as always, if you learned something new, thank you for watching, and consider leaving a like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you all for watching once again, even though it's the 3rd time I've said that, and let's have a berrific day.